That's right, everyone. Welcome back to the Principles of Fitness podcast. My name is Cameron Harn, and this episode is for you fitness professionals out there because we have fitness recruiter Jessie Stackhouse on the show today. Jessie is going to talk to us about some of the key qualities that gyms are looking for when hiring personal trainers. So if you're looking for a job in the fitness industry, Jessie's also going to talk about where corporate gyms or other boutique gyms are going to search for personal trainers. So what websites they are accessing and using to look for the best personal trainers around. Now, you can also find Jessie at justfitnessstaffing.com or search her on LinkedIn at Jessie Stackhouse. She's always happy to answer questions and point you in the right direction if you're looking for a job opportunity in the fitness industry. And if you're a gym owner or the owner of a boutique club, then Jessie is definitely the person that you want to connect with to find fitness professionals to help fill your staff. Now, I just want to take a second to let you all know that I had some technical difficulties recording this episode. I did the best I could to edit and correct some of these little overlaps in audio, so please bear with me during this episode. So let's go ahead and dive in with fitness recruiter Jessie Stackhouse. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm bummed we didn't get to meet today, but maybe at the LA Fit Expo, we'll get an opportunity to meet face-to-face. Could you tell me just a little bit about your involvement with the LA Fit Expo? Because from my past experiences, I never thought of it as like a place to meet other fitness professionals. It's always just kind of been like a meathead hangout from my experiences.
All of the expos are pretty unique. I feel like the LA Fit Expos, I remember the first one I attended. It's just an incredible experience. There are hundreds of thousands of people that show up. They're from all over the United States, all over the world. So it's international with that event. I actually am really well connected now with one of the directors, Angela Davies. She's based down in San Diego, but I've had the opportunity throughout the time, just kind of walking the floor at the expo initially, and then now at this point, to be able to have employment opportunities live when I'm at the expo. In the past, they have a main stage where they do the group fitness demos and, the celebrity training demos and things like that. So I've been there in the past, having a chance to do the workouts, interact with people, do some networking that way. And then this year, we're working on actually having the opportunity for people to sign up if they're interested in job opportunities, to get more information, and then to be able to connect with me beyond just being at the expo, to be able to see what job opportunities might be in their area or across the U.S. So are
you going to have a booth set up there, or are you just going to be walking around just kind of recruiting?
We'll probably have a booth towards the entrance. It's still in the process of we're ironing out all the details, but I will probably have a booth, and then I'll also be on foot too. So I like being mobile at those events. In the past at an IDEA convention, I did have a booth, where people were able to walk up to me, but I really like the ability to be able to go around, network with people, talk to some of the certification partners like NASM, ACE. Those guys are always out there. So it's a nice opportunity to just be able to walk the floor and get to see everybody and see the familiar faces and then meet new people too.
Do you get anybody that maybe isn't a personal trainer yet? What is the client base that you primarily work with? Are you looking for just personal trainers or gym owners? Like, what are you kind of like aiming for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I initially got into the industry, I was working with Equinox, and I was their West Coast recruiter. And the primary focus with that was personal training. So, Yep. So with that, it wasn't always people that had been training for years. We were also looking for people that were looking to get into the industry, looking to make a career change, or people that are just getting out of school, former athletes. So it started with just personal training. And then as my career has evolved, my time after Equinox with Crunch Fitness, I was recruiting for 40 different clubs across the United States. So within those clubs, we had positions, still for personal training, but also fitness managers, general managers, sales staff. During my time with Crunch, it really was the time where I realized by being able to place so many different kinds of positions within one company, including corporate roles like marketing, finance professionals, human resources professionals. That's basically when I saw the opportunity to go independent, start my own business, and then be able to service beyond just personal training, to be able to, support any position in the fitness industry. So yeah, that's a great question. But right now, like at this point, it's gone, beyond personal training, getting a chance to even dig into, different structures now at this point. Prior experience was always with corporate clubs. So now I'm digging into franchise owners, franchise locations, boutique facilities. I mean, there's just so many things out there. It's been a really great experience to get to see what's out there and how I can help people get connected with the hiring managers.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the perfect place to stay busy too, because I mean, Los Angeles is like the mecca for health and fitness. It's incredible out here.
It really is. It's exciting. And, you and I connected through the Moore Park program and Jeff Kryle throughout the time, especially with personal training recruiting. When I first got into the industry, I mean, I had prior recruiting experience. I had prior sales experience. So, I had somewhat of a sense of what I was getting myself into. But I realized really quickly, my goal was to figure out what I could do to find as many qualified personal trainers as possible. So I started with our online sources. But then beyond that, it was, forging relationships with the school programs in the area, Moore Park College, NPTI, Show Up Fitness, Sochi out in North Hollywood, these places where people were getting hands-on training from professionals for more than a month at a time. Some of these programs are like 6 months to a year, and especially Jeff's program over at Moore Park, people are coming out of these programs really well equipped to become successful personal trainers. So anyway, I just, there's just so many different directions you can go with trying to find people. And it's funny because people will ask me all the time, how do you find trainers? And I'm like, well, it's not just one thing. It's a little bit of almost everything. But there's definitely some really great places to start.
No, absolutely. And Jessie, I want to get back. I want to go into your business, your recruiting business a little bit more. First, though, I kind of want to take a step back and look at how you got started in the fitness industry. How did your career begin?
Yeah, so I had just moved to LA. I was working at Johnson & Johnson before I moved out to LA. And at the time, I was initially pursuing a passion of the fashion industry. And
oh, really?
Yeah. So I had been to fashion school in New York. I had a really great opportunity to have a little bit of a mixed, I think, background coming to LA. I worked in the fashion industry. I had worked as a medical device rep. I had the sales experience. I also had recruiting experience. So pretty quickly, I decided to go in a different direction from fashion, especially after making that transition from working at a Fortune 500 company, Johnson & Johnson, and then just, schlepping clothes around town in LA. It was just, it was a humbling experience, but that's when I realized too, that I really enjoy this structure that you can bring to an organization. And I was excited when I actually found the Equinox job posted on Craigslist of all places. I thought, this sounds really cool. I really enjoyed recruiting when I did that out of college. And I liked that it was specifically focused on personal trainers. So I thought, well, this is pretty awesome. I don't know that I have the exact experience they're looking for, but I think I have a lot of the skills that would translate with the sales experience. The brand, Equinox has a really strong brand. And I think that having that background in fashion also helped get my foot in the door with the interview process. But to be honest, I think it was just a really, really great timing and such a blessing to be able to get the position with Equinox when I did, because, I wasn't a personal trainer before that, so I didn't have a ton of industry experience. I was a student athlete, but I think the journey of my career since I've been in fitness, so approaching 6 years now, I have to say, I think it was kind of perfect timing and being able to show the applicable experience, but not necessarily what they were asking for in the job description.
Yeah. So what were they asking in the job description?
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and it's the same thing with personal training or general manager, sales positions, things like that. There's always, usually minimum requirements. We want to see 2 to 3 years of experience in the field or 2 to 3 years experience. And yes, a lot of times it does have to be something that closely correlates. But I think, in this particular scenario for myself, I had the background of being an athlete. I had the wherewithal to understand that I needed to research the certifications and have a general sense of where I would start to try to find personal trainers if I was recruiting them, kind of things that I would do, the activities, those expos, things like that. But I was able to show that I had a sense of understanding where I would go. Whether I had done it before and I was able to demonstrate it wasn't the case. So I had to prove myself. And I think throughout that process, the interview process and everything, you go back to different times in your life where, you didn't have experience doing something before, but you were able to learn quickly. You had those other soft skills or, the other skills that you can't tell somebody, the work ethic, the the relationship building, the personality, all that stuff, I think really helped me get the position with Equinox. So I hope it wasn't too long-winded, but
No, not at all. I want to ask you really quickly, what did you do to stand out in the interview process? You have no prior experience in the fitness industry. What did you do to show value to the company of what you could bring to the table?
That's a great question. It's funny because I remember at the time I was sitting in a panel interview, and Equinox can be pretty intimidating from an aesthetic standpoint when you walk in. I remember the first time I actually worked out, in an Equinox, and I had remembered seeing them when I lived in New York when I was in fashion and everything, and I remembered the brand. And so in the interview process, I worked out at the facility. It was actually Westwood. And I took one of the classes. I don't remember what it was called, but we used a Viper. Have you ever used a Viper before, Cameron?
Oh, absolutely. I know the guys.
I'm sure you have, at this point. But to me, it was something brand new that I had never really seen. Those
there's all these handles. What do I do with this thing?
And I remember feeling really overwhelmed, but also really excited because I felt like this is a company that's on top of what's happening. They have the latest in the technology. They have the power plates. All of these things that were, for me and my running background, we didn't have those things. I went to a great school, Furman University in South Carolina, but we weren't working out with a power plate when we were in strength and conditioning and weight room. So I think that during the interview process, I tried to take a look at the brand. I tried to take a look at what would I do to find personal trainers. I would make relationships with the certification partners, with where the people are getting certified so that I could help them get job opportunities after they get certified. That's one thing. I would go to schools. I would go to kinesiology, exercise science departments, get to the department heads, get our foot in the door as a brand so that we could either do presentations at the schools, we could mentor students, potentially do internships. There were a lot of different opportunities, I felt like, with school relationships. So that was another thing that I said I felt we could find people that way. Some non-traditional sourcing. The NCAA has a job board where you can post your positions. A lot of times it's coaching opportunities and things like that. But like athletes were obviously a really good place to start, since people already tend to like working out and they're used to being in a weight room and, have a general sense of how things operate and work. And I felt like focusing on athletes and how we could connect with them was another great opportunity. So there's a lot of other things along the way. It's just a mix of constantly building and maintaining relationships with all of those sort of sourcing opportunities. So I think, when I laid out a plan like that, they were able to see the thought process and give me an opportunity to prove myself.
So how did that experience start off for you? How was it getting into Equinox and starting recruiting for personal trainers for the very first time?
Oh, man, that's a great question. So I think pretty early on, we were opening new clubs. Downtown LA was just about to open. We had certain clubs that, right away you realize, okay, we're always going to need to be looking for people in certain areas. There can be a little more turnover in certain areas than others, depending on what people are doing and, how focused they
Turnover
are
as far
on
as employees go?
Yes. Yeah. So, certain areas like Hollywood, for example, you tend to get a lot of people that are not just there to be personal trainers. They're usually somewhat involved in the entertainment industry, becoming actors. So there's usually something other than just full-time training as a focus. Does that answer your question? There's just certain areas that that I learned very quickly. I need to always be looking, whether they have an opening on the team or not. It's probably likely that in a month's time, we might need 2 or 3 more trainers at a certain location.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it's on a location by location basis, because you could have, I think there's a lot of people who enter into the industry and either they get into it, it's fun for them from the get-go, but maybe they have an interest in becoming an actor or actress, going into law enforcement, going into the fire department. So personal training is kind of like an afterthought. So I understand the turnover rate at any club can be incredible.
And that's something, that's a whole nother discussion, but that's something that with every employer that I've worked with, it's something everybody's really looking to reduce, because obviously when you hire good people, you want them to stay. And so I think it's always several different reasons why people change jobs and do something different. I have my theories just over the time of doing this, but again, I don't want to open a whole other can of worms. But along with recruiting is always the subject of retention. That's with every client that I work with. And so beyond, just trying to work with them on finding talent, I tend to, give some advice on things I've picked up along the way on what employers are doing to retain them as well.
Very cool. So you're kind of just getting started. You're experiencing this transition with turnover rate, locations being so different from each other, even though they're at Equinox, they typically grow gyms like pretty close within like another location. So was it overwhelming for you at first?
It was.
Kind of just starting out in the fitness industry?
It was, because it's something brand new. To me at the time, I didn't know the difference between ACE and ACSM, and now I do. And I could, explain anything, not anything, but I have a really good sense. So it was just a matter of, learning certifications, learning the geographic area. Again, I was still pretty new to LA, so it was just, everything was always a new experience. But it was also really rewarding. But I have to say, that's where I think, especially with this industry, it takes a certain kind of personality and it takes a certain kind of grit, because you can't come into something that you know nothing about and think that it's going to happen without an incredible amount of work and effort and frustration and tears and the things that happen along the way. But if you're new at something, you have to have the understanding that you're going to have to just keep working, trial and error, successes and failures and that's still happening. It's definitely still happening now that I have a new business and I'm learning all kinds of things along the way. I think at the time, just getting into the industry, it was, a little overwhelming, but also it's rewarding. I think, during the time that I was with Equinox, it was pretty cool that Crunch contacted me it was, like I said, this is always a busy time. It was the holiday season several years ago. And they said, just kind of curious if you'd be open to another opportunity. We're looking for somebody, that has your skill set, but it's going to be more responsibility. It would be the entire US. And at that time, I was only recruiting maybe 12 or 15 clubs for Equinox here in Southern California. I also had a couple clubs up in San Francisco.
Wow.
But yeah, to me, I was thinking, wow, I'll be doing New York, San Francisco, Miami, LA. That's pretty overwhelming, but also it was really exciting. And I just thought, if I can place 500 trainers for Southern California, I can place 500 trainers, which was the initial goal for Crunch. I thought, if I can do it in Southern California, I think I could do it across the whole United States. So again, I think it's one of those things where you never really know sometimes exactly what you're getting into until you're in it.
I want to ask a quick question. Being, starting off as a recruiter for Equinox, it's a very reputable club. And what exactly are they looking for as far as material for personal trainers? Are they looking for somebody with a bachelor's degree? What do they hold valuable as far as certifications go or experience goes?
So Equinox, I'd say the first thing that comes to mind, they are looking for a polished, well-educated person who isn't afraid to sell. And I'd say that probably those standards come across, every organization that I work with. Ideally, I think they look for somebody who's already had some, established experience, but they're definitely open. Equinox is definitely open to people that are new to the industry. I think with every club, you actually have to look at every club as its own thing. The hiring managers at each club are looking for something different. So that was definitely something I learned along the way. It wasn't just, oh, you guys are looking for somebody with an NASM degree. No, I mean, there were certain locations that, that was a preferred certification, but every manager is looking for something different. It was really about identifying the hiring manager and what their team was going to be built, and then trying to find the right person to match that. And the same thing for the candidate. So if a candidate was a little more green to the industry, if they had literally just done self-study and maybe trained a couple of their friends, I would keep in mind, well, what's a good club to match somebody up with that's relatively new? Somewhere that they are going to be able to get a little more hands-on, a little more coaching from the fitness manager, from the personal training manager, things like that.
Okay. And was there any difference between Crunch and Equinox? Are they looking for different things? Honestly, are there any similarities?
They tend to be looking for the same kind of thing. Actually, was thinking about things, before the podcast, and I thought I'd put together a couple things that employers look for. So I don't want to rank them in order necessarily, but these are common things. So willingness to be to learn from others and to be coachable. So they're always looking for somebody that has that team mentality. Yes, personal training is individual, but yes, you are definitely in a team environment where sometimes you're coming across the same client that maybe both trainers want to train, but the bottom line is, they're definitely looking for people that are coachable and don't think they know everything already. So regardless of however long you've been in the industry, I always say, be open to new ideas and a new way of doing things. The other thing, personality. So personality, I mean, it goes without saying, but this happens and I get this feedback. It's, this person looks great on paper. They have these certifications or qualifications that we're looking for, but in person, they just were not engaging, or they lacked the enthusiasm or the energy. And I have to say, personality isn't something that you can manufacture, but I think, especially with this industry, introverts can definitely be successful, but I'd say most of the time, it's those extroverted personalities that tend to go much further in this, career. They tend to be more successful. But not to say that there aren't introverted people that can also be very, very successful. It tends to be a theme where people that are more outgoing, who aren't afraid to go and talk to members, who aren't afraid of the rejection that's going to happen time and time again, they still put a smile on their face, they still go out, still keep that positive energy. I'd say personality, however you can try to define that, that's something that's always an element of somebody getting hired at an organization. And then certifications and schooling, I mean, that's something else that they're always looking at, right? So what I used to do is I had a little more one-on-one coaching with people when they were in the interview process. And I would say things like, what's your specialty? Are you the kickboxing guru or high intensity interval training? I mean, beyond just being a personal trainer, like, know what you're really good at. Are you good with the special populations? Are you good with yeah. So I think, when somebody's in the interview process, keeping all those things in mind, but definitely be able to speak to what value you're bringing to the organization and what thing you're going to bring that's a little different than what they might already have.
So then with certifications or schooling, do certain companies hold a degree
I have run into
above
that,
a certification?
To be honest, it's only been one time. And the reason for that is that they had a sponsored person. So like most of the time, the companies that I work with, people typically do not sponsor the work visa process. So if somebody's an international candidate, unfortunately, in the recruiting side of things, there's not a lot I can do to help people that don't already have their authorization to work in the United States. A particular company was out in Georgetown, and they did have the minimum requirement of the exercise science degree because, they have to keep those certain standards. But I'd say every other time it tends to be, the degree is preferred because you've had a lot of training, right? You've had a lot of knowledge, a lot of background information coming into it. So the degree is definitely preferred, but it doesn't tend to be the minimum qualification. So certifications, NASM, ACE, NCCPT, ISSA, NCSF. I mean, there's so many certification partners, but those tend to be, there's usually a preferred list, and those are usually the minimum qualifications, is that somebody, at least needs to be certified. I have worked for companies where they don't require that upon being hired. They are open, again, because the person exhibits other qualities, whether it's the sales, the knack for sales, or the personality, or, whatever background they're coming from, where the hiring manager has said, yes, I would like to hire this person. We're going to give them 90 days to get certified. We still want to bring them on because we don't want to miss out on them. So I think it's always dependent on the organization, but I do think, there's an idea of preferred certifications, preferred, backgrounds that come into this. I feel like what I've observed over time is that it tends to be these other skills beyond a certification that make a trainer really successful.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I've had experiences with other clubs, or maybe not even clubs, just not quite franchise gyms, but let's say sports specific gyms, right? And I don't have a degree, to be honest. I have experience. I have 8 years of experience in the industry. I wasn't able to go to school due to some financial reasons. From that point on, I was like, okay, well, if I can't go to school, I'm gonna study all my own. I'm gonna get the same textbooks that these universities are getting. I'm gonna network and meet as many people as I can in the industry, go to as many certifications as possible. And even with that experience, I would go to, let's say, a certain gym that specialized in sports performance and presented my resume. And the first thing they would go is, do you have a degree? I'd say, no, but I've got like this much experience, these many certifications, over 10 of them, and they'd shy me away. And I was just like, what the heck? But with somebody who could have, let's say, an English degree, they'd prefer them over me, which is just like mind blowing. Is there a reason for that? Like, is it because, and I've heard from some people, maybe you can shed some light on this as a recruiter for different clubs and stuff. Is it because some areas with somebody who may have just gotten a degree, do they want to mold that person? Do they feel that they're going to be able to mold into their system a little bit better than somebody who has experience, and maybe they feel that they are just kind of set in their ways?
That if I'm just speaking honestly, it tends to be a bit of an antiquated thought process that a degree, any degree would be required. This industry is different. Pretty much exactly what you just described. There are so many people that do not come with even an AA degree that are very good trainers. They're making over 80, 100K. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say, anytime you can support yourself in that capacity, not having a degree, that's the thing is when I, come across things like that, I tend to try to give some coaching. So now what I'm running into is that, depending on the business owner, depending on how long they've been in the industry, people definitely know what they think they want. And sometimes you have to suggest, hey, I know that this person doesn't have, the degree, or this person doesn't have, the 2 to 3 years of experience that you were looking for. But look, they're already training clients independently. They've already trained, this. And so that's where I'll at least have the opportunity that because that person didn't have it on their resume. I think the great thing about what I do is that I get somebody in front of them that maybe normally wouldn't have ever gotten in front of them just based on other qualifications or whatever, or just the fact that most of the time, business owners don't sit at the computer. I mean, nobody in fitness typically does not sit behind the computer all day. So for me to be able to have the chance to do that and to mine through the people or, have those initial conversations and then get in front of the hiring manager and say, hey, I know this person doesn't have, this thing that you had asked for, but they have this, this, and this. And I think, that definitely warrants a discussion. Would you be open to talking to them? Most of the time, yes. A lot of times I have people that apply for roles like a regional vice president role that they've been great personal trainers, but they haven't even managed a club yet. So to me, I'm like, okay, this person wants to advance in their career. They're not quite at, a vice president level role yet, but maybe, they could come in at an elite level or on a track for an assistant fitness manager, something like that. But otherwise that person would have been completely dismissed and never would have been hired at all by the organization. But because I've had a chance to look at it and see what other, things might be able to translate or where they might be able to fit in, that person still gets a shot at getting in front of the hiring managers. It's funny because it seems like fitness would be, maybe from an outside perspective, it would be simple. Like, oh yeah, you just find a trainer, or you just find a manager. Fitness, but it's not. It's complicated and everybody's looking for something a little bit different. Every club culture is a little bit different. Management styles. I think that's what makes it so fun.
It's not a one size fits all industry, just like how diet or nutrition is not a one size fits all program. I mean, there are certain needs that every location is looking for, and not everybody's going to fit that role. Just like, I mean, I can't train, I'm not going to be able to train everybody in the world. Like there's just some personalities that I won't mesh with well, and some people might not like the training style that I have. So, there's just some people that won't work for you. So it's about vetting who you're working with and placing them in the best possible environment for them to thrive.
Well,
is there any more to that list, Jessie?
You were asking about my background, how I got in. I think it's, it's an interesting story, but I think, for me to be able to say what I find for the most part, people are looking for jobs, or if people want to get into the industry, or if somebody, I'd say personal trainers is probably the specialty, that I can speak to on somebody wanting to get into the industry. I think candidates, sometimes don't know, okay, well, what do I do? Do I just apply online? What's the process? I don't know. I hope this helps, but I tried to put together some ideas that people can do to try to successfully get their foot in the door. So, I mean, there's basic things. So starting with online, I typically say start with Indeed.com. Start with your online sources. Do a search in your area in a commutable distance. Something in LA, for example, you're not going to want to go more than 15 miles out, probably. I mean, it could be a really crazy commute otherwise. But you can search the jobs in the area on Indeed. And Indeed has a great technology where every night, any employer that has posted a job on their website, Indeed will pull that information. So it scrapes all of those career sites. The next day, it will post that new job. So, and does it for free. I mean, the algorithm, it's the way that the site works. But that way, if you're actively looking, you can see when a job was posted. I'd say typically jobs that are posted in 30 days or less, you're going to have the much greater chance of, having an actual discussion. I'd say even in the last 10 days of the date that job was posted, know that those are active jobs. That means that employer is probably still in the interview process, still looking for new applications. Anything beyond 30 days, be careful, because especially with fitness, things get stale. And if a job is open for like 90 days and it's still online, then, there's a chance you're not going to hear back, if that makes sense. And then also what I like about Indeed is that you can, put your information in there, put your email address, and it will email you each day new job alerts. So it's nice because you don't actually have to sit down every day and do the same search. You can get your email, see what's happening in the morning. And then also this is something that's always ongoing. And then even if you're not actively looking for a job, but you think you might be looking for a change at some point, or you just kind of want to see what advancement opportunities might be out there, I really feel like Indeed is a good resource. The other thing for our industry, and I don't know why I still laugh a little bit about it, but Craigslist is actually a really good source. There's still a lot of organizations that are posting their personal training jobs on Craigslist. And I've actually found a lot of really great candidates through Craigslist. I mean, that again is how I got my job with Equinox. That's how I even knew it existed. So, Craigslist is valuable for that. And then the other main thing that we found, along the way, is referring, right? So if you have friends that are trainers, if you, went to a school program, like I know you went to Moore Park, but talk to your friends, see where they're working, see where they're working out, and get familiar with the facility. But I'd say, most of the time between people looking for jobs and then people who stay in jobs, if you know somebody who's already there and you know what the situation might look like already, that's kind of the best way. Those are some top sourcing or ways that you can kind of look and see what's out there. I also do encourage people sometimes, if it makes sense, don't bombard the front desk staff, but it is good to go in and get a feel for the club and what it looks like and the culture. And don't be afraid to walk in and introduce yourself. Yeah, you might just get the front desk staff, but if you go at a slower time when the club isn't super busy and it's not the end of the month, you might be lucky enough to be able to sit down with a hiring manager that day. Because again, most of the time people are not at their computer and they're not looking at those online applications. So I know that I encouraged you to look online, but it also gives the opportunity to see who's hiring, see who's actively looking. And I think if people take that additional step and they actually go in person, dress nicely, present yourself well, have a copy of your resume in a folder, and say, if you're not able to meet the hiring manager that day, ask for their business card so that you can email them, and find a point of contact that's direct. A lot of times there's no system with front desk. So if you just leave it with front desk and hope that somebody's going to get your resume, I mean, sometimes it happens, but I'd say most of the time it probably doesn't. So if you can try to get some contact information, use your best sense of things. Don't harass people. But if you take that in-person visit, sometimes you might get the opportunity to meet that hiring manager, if only for a minute, to introduce yourself and then later set a date that you guys will have a formal interview. I think that it's a good approach to show the kind of, personality that you have. And it's a nice way to get in front of a hiring manager if you're really wanting to work at a certain place.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because you're giving somebody an opportunity to see you for who you truly are. And it shows initiative, which I think initiative goes a long way with people. That if I'm willing to step into your gym during off hours and just say, hey, I'm looking for a job, it shows commitment. And I love when I see people who are committed and they take initiative like that.
Right.
And
Definitely.
That goes a long way for me. And I think for a hiring manager, it would be pretty impressive for them as well. So I wanted to ask you also, with your recruiting, are you just posting job opportunities online? Are you meeting the recruits individually? What happens when you recruit somebody, place them in a location?
So, I would typically do an initial phone screen. I'd invite. Yeah, but now as things have evolved, I have clients across the country. So a lot of,
And then
the
now
work
it's
is
kind
either
of
online or on the
you are
phone.
posting things.
Sometimes I'll do a Skype or FaceTime or something if need be. But a lot of the times for me, I try to speed up the process by getting that person to the hiring manager. I have some initial screening, but then I ultimately just want to get those two connected so that they can meet in person and then move forward from there. But what I used to love, I have this story I'll never forget. Canada, it was brand new club, so downtown LA was opening for Equinox, and Hugh Brockton, he did not have any personal training experience prior. His resume had mostly really nice, hospitality industry. I remember it was, I think, one of the 5-star restaurants out here. And I thought he had written a thoughtful cover letter expressing his interest in becoming a personal trainer and getting in the industry. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this kid a chance. So I invited him to the open house. He just had this amazing energy. And I was like, see, like, you would never know this by looking at a resume. You just wouldn't. So I had the chance to meet him. And I'll be honest, he went on in one interview and unfortunately it didn't work out with that particular location. He got back to me. He said, Jessie, I just really want to do this. I might be summarizing. It's been a while since this was Equinox, probably 5 years ago. But I said, okay. I coached him a little bit. I said, so next time when you talk to him, make sure that you talk about some of the things like the experience that you've had from training your friends and things like that. And anyway, bottom line is, it must have been, and I did, and it was like one more time. I was like, I just want him to have a chance. So it was the open house for downtown LA, and I remember sitting next to the fitness manager at the time, and he sat down and smiled, and he just, he aced the interview. And afterwards, the hiring manager was like, I really like that kid. I'm like, I know, I really think could be great.
Awesome.
Long story short, I think he became, a tier 3 trainer pretty quickly. I wouldn't be surprised. I have to be honest, I haven't looked in the last year or so to see where he's at, but he invested. I remember one time I did get to reconnect with him. He was still with Equinox, which again, I think anytime somebody's with a company for, especially in fitness, for more than 3 years, really shows their commitment to that organization. And I was like, man, he's still there. He's like one of the top trainers and still a great personality. And so it was like one of those stories where I realized it was like, man, if I could do that more often, really obviously somebody who really enjoys what they do and the lives that they're changing and they're very passionate. It's just that not everybody gets that chance, but also not everybody is as persistent. Sometimes you're told no, but sometimes just keep trying, because if it's something you really want to do, you'll find a way to make it happen. I feel like I have to get back in touch with him now and see where he's at or what he's doing, but I'm sure he's still, I'll look it up. I'll let you know.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to hear about what happened to him.
Yeah, I'm approaching my 6th year.
So, Jessie,
it's
you've
been amazing.
What, 6 or 7 years in the industry?
Where were you going with that?
Perfect. That's what I was about to ask.
Yes.
How has it treated you so far? How has
the thing with
this whole process been?
I feel like the way that I'm structured or the way that
haul?
I am, once I get into something, I can't help but just go, full force, 120%. And during, my time with Equinox and then transitioning into Crunch and then, being the only recruiter at Crunch for over 40 locations, and at every location there's many managers, so 80 to 100. I don't even know how many hiring managers at some point I was able to help support, but that's when I really saw, and going to these expos and the more people that you meet along the way, you can tend to hear the same kind of themes. How do I find trainers? How do you do what you do? And I thought, if I could help not just one company because I'm bound by contract, right? But if I'm able to start my own business and I can help support many companies, including franchise clubs, because that was, something else. It was, there is just there's so much in this market. And I know I'm only at the tip of the iceberg right now. I mean, I'm a year into having my own business and doing this, but it's not just corporations. It's not just franchise locations. It's not just boutiques. There's also these independent training facilities where the owners are looking for more independent trainers to bring their clients and run their own businesses. So I'm starting to tap into all these other parts of the industry that I didn't even realize were there. So I have to say it's not easy, and it's definitely not easy running your own business. And there's so many things that you learn along the way. But I'm definitely committed. So I can't say that I'm the expert, but I can tell you that I do try really hard. So whether it's whatever company I'm working for, I try to, be as thorough as possible and just dig in, because every company that I tend to come across or that I'm working with is growing. They're growing quickly. They needed something yesterday or, 6 months ago. And so I feel like this is definitely an industry that I think impacts a lot of lives in a positive way. Yes, it can be really sales oriented and numbers oriented, but I think when you take a step back and you see the impact of fitness and wellness on people's lives, maybe it's a little too rosy, but I try to look at the big picture and think, hopefully in some way I am impacting I'm impacting people's lives in a positive way, whether that's through connecting them with trainers or connecting those trainers with manager. I did have a trainer one time that helped save somebody's life that was starting to have a heart attack at Crunch. And I had found that guy on LinkedIn, Dewey Tran. I had found him on LinkedIn I want to say it was maybe a month or two before the incident happened. And it's like, he was the first one to respond. And because of him, this person is still alive. And so I don't know, again, it's only one example, but I think, in the long run, I hope that lives are impacted in a positive way and that we're doing something good here. I thought it was amazing that you reached out. There's so many things that, because I tend to be behind the computer working, I don't get exposed to. So I'm excited that I had a chance to connect with you and learn more. And this is definitely an ever evolving industry, and there's always something to learn, and something's always changing. But yeah, I'm definitely excited. I hope to be in it for the long haul.
No, it's definitely an incredible industry, Jessie. And I think that great people connect great people. So, Jeff is such an amazing individual over at Moorpark College, and he's doing some incredible things with his program. And I'm so thankful that he was able to connect the two of us, because I think this is a very important topic for other fitness professionals or even fitness enthusiasts who may be thinking about getting into the personal training industry, or somebody who just wants to, maybe dabble into sales or managing a club. It's important for them to understand, what clubs or franchises or even small boutique gyms.
And so I know we talked about it before too, but January 6th, the Fit Expo, I definitely encourage people, if you're thinking about getting into the industry, if you just kind of want to see what it's like, it's definitely a really cool event to kind of get to see a little bit of everything. You're going to see, some of the bodybuilding, some of the group fitness demos, the nutrition side. The education partners that are there. I think if it's an industry you're thinking about getting into, or it's something that you're already doing, you can still learn so much and get so many valuable contacts from walking the expo floor. So I definitely encourage people, check out the Fit Expo, look at IDEA. That's another big expo that they have here in LA. But those are pretty incredible networking events. And a lot of times too, business owners will be there. There'll be the people who are working the booths, and you can literally meet them right there that day. So I'll be there. I know I look forward to getting to meet you in person there, and people should keep it on their calendars. Early January, Los Angeles. It's a nice time to be here and be out of the colder parts of the country.
Couple more questions before we wrap up here. Who is
Oh,
someone
that's a
that
great
mentored
question.
you in your early stages
The
in the fitness
person that just
industry, and
immediately
what
comes to
is an
mind
important lesson they
is
taught you?
Nasario Mejia. He was the vice president at Crunch, and he's the person who contacted me to potentially make a move. Don't want to get him in trouble for that, but I am forever grateful. So yeah, I think Nasario definitely had the greatest impact for sure on this point in my career. He was open to new ideas. And also, I just constantly felt like I was learning things. I mean, just all the time. And he would think of things in a different way. And I thought, oh, I wouldn't have even thought of that. So I have to say, for sure, Nasario was definitely a great mentor. He has since started his own business too. He's also doing some recruiting. It's called Blue Chip Theory. And Nasario, man, he was in the industry. He's been in the industry for so long. He knows so many people. And again, I just have to say, I really, appreciate that we had the opportunity to connect when we did, because I think between, the time at Crunch and then when I finally decided to start my own business, which is just like such an overwhelming decision for some reason. It's scary when you start your own thing, but he has been a mentor and friend along the way. So I'm very, very grateful. And also, Jeff Kreil, sorry. Jeff has been, man, I mean, I've known him since almost the beginning too. I met him initially at an ACE conference. He connected you and I, and when I see the way that Jeff impacts the students, the way that he's grown the program at Moorpark from, I think it was 5 or 10 students initially, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of students in that program now. It's a small school. I think with his passion and the way that he really brings people together. So I have to say, between those two gentlemen, it's really been a pleasure being able to be connected with both of them.
I love it.
Oh, I don't know. That's a great question. I'm going to have to think about that for a second.
In your earlier years?
Here's the thing. I guess it's hard to talk about as a female sometimes, but I felt at some point in my career, I was realizing what I was initially hired to do, which was the, personal training recruiting. And then I had realized where my responsibilities had evolved. And it was, at that point, way beyond personal training. It was training, group fitness, was just sales staff. It was basically anything that was coming up and open in the organization was something that I was supporting the recruiting efforts on. So at some point I thought, well, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. What can I do differently that I might be able to be compensated in the same way that like a single fitness man, like one fitness manager, I knew what the earning potential was on that job. And I thought, well, as I'm one person, but I'm handling all of these different clubs and locations and responsibilities, what could I maybe do differently? Because of the time and effort that I'm putting into this career, what could I do differently to be compensated different? So we had some difficult conversations, but to be honest, he really was a good person he was the person that I had to have those conversations with at some point. And then after he left the organization, it was somebody else. But those are difficult conversations to have. So when you can have somebody that can mentor you and listen to you, but also say, hey, maybe try a different approach in these kind of conversations. I think that was a valuable experience because I think a lot of times at some point in their career, everybody talks about compensation, right? So it's not always with Johnson & Johnson, we had a yearly review and it was a very buttoned up process, a very, you knew what that was going to look like. Maybe it could be a 7% raise year over year or something like that. So with fitness, that tends to not be the case. There isn't usually always a sit down at the end of the year or a trajectory for where your career is going to go and what your new job title is going to look like. Especially during my time with Crunch, that was the time where I had those conversations for the first time in my career. So I'm definitely, again, I'm really grateful for those experiences. And I think that sometimes things are uncomfortable, but they shape you. And that's the thing is that eventually because of whatever I felt or the things that I thought, is that I did end up starting my own business. And right now I'm definitely still learning, but I'm still thrilled to be able to be in the position that I'm at now, to be able to run a day the way I see fit, and be able to support a lot of different kinds of clients and things like that. So again, I don't want to be too long-winded, but I feel like sometimes it's like one thing that somebody mentors you on, but it impacts almost everything else that you do from there too. So
Jessie, this has been so much fun.
That's a great
Thank
question.
You so much for
The business name
Where
is
can people
Just
find
Fitness
you
Staffing.
And just learn a little bit more about what you're up to?
On Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you can find me Jessie Stackhouse. And there's a good chance I might have already tried to connect with you if you're in the fitness industry. 10,000 people and growing. But yeah, I'd say LinkedIn's a great way. You can also email me at jessie@justfitnessstaffing.com. Always here for a resource too. I do have people that reach out sometimes and just want to know what they can do to get into the industry. And I'm happy to have those conversations when I can. So, well, I'm just really excited. I am grateful for the opportunity.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Cameron,
Jesse,
for
any final thoughts
thinking
before
of
we
me,
hang up
and
here?
especially to be, be on a podcast with some of the greatest in the industry, Neil Spruce. And I mean, it's definitely a really rewarding experience. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. And I'm excited to stay connected with you as we journey forward in our fitness careers. Awesome.
Yes, I
Thank
love
you
it.
so much,
Thank
Cameron.
you. I'm honored to have you on. It's been such a pleasure.
Okay, you too. Talk to you soon.
That's a wrap. That's it for this episode of The Principles of Fitness, everyone. I want to give Jessie a special thanks for being with us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share, leave a comment on iTunes, and stay tuned for the next episode of The Principles of Fitness.